Hi everybody, welcome back. Let's cover Chapter 13 today, which covers the juvenile court system. So we've moved on. Yep, we're on Chapter 13 already. So as you hear me say all the time, we need to change gears a little bit, start understanding a little bit more about the juvenile court system. Okay. Many contemporary advocates of the juvenile court continue to insist that the informal setting of the court and the parental demeanor of the judge enable wayward youth to be saved or rescued from possible lives of crime. Remember way back, they went to court just like an adult. They got sentenced like an adult. They got sentenced and sent to adult prisons. Not really good. So obviously today I feel, and I agree with this statement, that the judge does have a big influence, and the less formal settings for relatively non-serious juvenile offenders, I think it helps. I think they, in many instances don't have that parental figure. So if a judge sits down and talks with them, I think it's worth its weight in gold. There are the basic ideals in which juvenile court was founded. So, ideals of juvenile court. The top left, number one, youth should be given the same care as that provided by a good parent. Two, to the right, the aim of the court is to restore, help, and forgive. I say yes, but there's always a yeah, but. There's always, we forgive you, but you still have to have some type of discipline. Not every case can be just, okay, probation, community service, next. No, what about burglary? What about repeated burglaries? Okay, bottom left, number three, youth should not be treated as criminals. But that's a blanket statement. In this case, I don't agree with your book. There's got to be another side to that. They need to be treated as criminals depending upon the incident, depending on the case. If they did a carjacking, yeah, they need to be treated as criminals. 4, the rights of youth are the rights to shelter, protection, and proper guardianship. Absolutely. So the need for change. Constitutionalists have influenced the juvenile justice system, and I'll say good and bad. As with any court decision, as with any case law, any adjudications, any legislation, there's always a dark side, and there's always a bright side, and gray in the middle. So in the 20th century, they contended that the juvenile court was unconstitutional because under its system, the principles of a fair trial and individual rights were denied. I agree. The series of decisions by the U.S. Supreme Court in the 1960s and 70s, as we've seen, demonstrated the influence of the constitutionalists on juvenile justice. It got better. We woke up as a society. Revision was born. So kids court and the pretrial process. The types of cases that are under the jurisdiction of the juvenile court, they vary widely within and among states, but they generally include those involving delinquency, neglect, and dependency. So they're the same to a point. How they process, a little bit different. Let's face it. I mean, a lot of you think, well, we live in a democracy. We're actually not. We are a republic, and what that means is that each state has its right to set up its own laws to a point. So we are the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible. Yeah, there we go. That's the pledge. That's why we are a republic. In 2010, juvenile courts handled an estimated 1.3 million delinquency cases. Can you imagine the number today? I hope it's lower. I didn't have that number. Detention hearings. All right. At a detention hearing, the criteria for detention are based on the need to protect the youth and to ensure public safety. Remember, just because they're a kid It doesn't mean they haven't done something extremely egregious, dangerous, carjacking, robbery, first-degree murder. They're all applicable. Are we supposed to just pat them on the head and say, okay, go ahead? No. Sometimes we have to detain them because the public has a right to be safe. The decision to detain must be made within a short period of time, usually 48 to 72 hours, excluding weekends and holidays. Yes and no. In my experience, depending upon the case, quite often we had a group that would come in of juveniles, and they did a carjacking or a robbery or something very serious of nature, and we called the hearing officers and said, listen, this is what we got. You need to get in here, and they'll house them right then. Doesn't matter if it's a weekend. Doesn't matter if it's a holiday. So I disagree with your book here. Urban courts, which have intake units on duty 24 hours a day for detention hearings, frequently act within a few hours. Well, there's my example for you. I always get ahead. Sorry. The detention center physically restricts use for a short period. And that period, it depends. It really depends on the nature of the case, depends upon seriousness, did it cross state lines? There's a lot of variables there. Okay, shelter care is physically non-restrictive and is available to those who have no homes or require juvenile court intervention. Sometimes we can't let them loose. The parents are absent, no grandparents available. And the parents might be absent because they're locked up, or they're avid drug users, or it's an unsafe home. The list goes on. They have no place to go. A third type of placement, of course, is jail or police lockup. A fourth, home detention, which restricts a juvenile to his or her home and is supervised normally by a paraprofessional staff member. Their home. So they're being supervised by a parent. Sometimes they have electronic monitoring. And what they say, a paraprofessional staff member. I don't quite understand that term. It's parole probation. They're professional as far as I'm concerned. Finally, they offer services and staff support in non-restrictive settings such as mentoring camps, role model interactions. Sports heroes will stop in and talk to boot camp folks, or kids that go to the sheriff ranch, or church camps. They do get that positive mentoring. But who else can give that? You can. Absolutely. All right, so some options. Some options for case disposal. The intake unit, especially in large urban courts, may have up to 5 options for the disposal of cases. Sometimes they can just dismiss it. You know what? We've read this, and this is where you step in, or are responsible, I should say. What if your report isn't clear? What if it's not complete? What if the probable cause isn't established? Sometimes, you know what? They just drop the case right there. Informal adjustment. Chiefly diversion to a non-judicial agency, restitution is paid, and the kid is warned. So they might get sent to be mentored by law enforcement and told, hey, we're going to repay the victim. You're going to fix that mailbox, or whatever you did. Fix the ruts in the old lady's yard that you spun out, and don't do this again. I don't want to see it back in my court. Informal probation. Casual check-ins with the child. Sometimes they don't even have to check in. Sometimes they just email. They have to email and saying, this is what I did, this is what I've done, or make a phone call in conjunction with the email. And that's sometimes enough. They may never, except for the one time, have to see that probation officer. Just that one initial time in court. 4, consent decree. Formal agreement without formal finding of delinquency. And what that means is, okay, I did it, and then all the other diversion options perhaps jump in. we'll give you this, and you do that, and you pay this, and you're not delinquent, you're not adjudicated, but we don't want to see it in here again. Filing of a petition. Option by the intake officer to get the child back into the system. At the end, sometimes we have no option. They won't stop offending for whatever reason. And all the outreach is taking place, all the informal adjustments, they were on probation, and nothing sticks. We keep trying, but sometimes you just have to do what you have to do. All right, so transfer to adult court. Judicial waiver and legislative waiver, also called remand, certification, and waiver of jurisdiction, are the two basic mechanisms for transferring juvenile offenders to the adult criminal justice system. You know, it depends on the age, but it depends on the state and what the statutes are in legislation and with that state they're in. But first degree murder, 17, you can be tried as an adult. The more common of the two takes place after a judicial hearing on a juvenile's willingness to treatment or his or her threat to public safety. Again, it depends upon the case. If they're a threat to public safety and their crime is so egregious and so serious, often these cases will go to adult court. And you'll see that watching Fox 5 News. You'll see juvenile has been remanded to an adult hearing or adult court. Actually, it happens pretty often, sadly. Legislative action narrows juvenile court jurisdiction, excluding from juvenile courts those youths charged with certain offenses. Sometimes we don't want to. Again, there's legislative action that takes away discretion. So jury trials for juveniles. There are 10 states that provide for a jury trial for juveniles, but jury trials are seldom demanded. I've never seen one. I've been to juvenile court probably a couple hundred times at least. I've never seen a jury convened. Never. It's always a judge, prosecutor, and defense. And probation and parole. Statutory provisions often close juvenile hearings to the general public. Although this decision varies from one jurisdiction to the next, it also varies upon the case. It varies on the judge. The judge has discretion. Once a youth has been found delinquent, some juvenile court codes still permit judges to proceed immediately to the disposition, which is the sentencing, that hearing. Some don't. Some remand the juvenile to the correctional facility. The bailiffs take them, put them with other juveniles that are locked up, and another date is set. Sometimes it's right now. However, the present trend is to hold a split hearing. And what's that? Well, I kind of explained it. You know what it is? I kind of gave a few clues already. A split hearing gives the probation officer or the office appointed to the case an opportunity to prepare a social study and basically bring their case in. Your Honor, Junior here hasn't been in trouble before. He's had some parking tickets or whatever, and I recommend this. Or Junior here, this is his third carjacking, armed robbery, crack possession, sale. He's constantly in trouble in school. He's truant, blah, 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 blah. So the decision, obviously, and those examples will be different, but a split hearing. The judge might order what? Dismissal of the charges and restitution, which is, well, you hit that old lady's mailbox and you damaged all the mailboxes with a baseball bat on those streets. Guess what? You're paying for them. Outpatient psychiatric therapy. Sometimes kids, they need it, but I order it. It's not an option. Probation. Foster home placement. Mom and dad aren't that great. Grandparents are out of the picture or deceased. Day treatment program. You need to go to this program. You get out of school, you need to go spend 3 or 4 hours here. and make sure you get your homework done. They make sure that you're on straight and narrow, you get counseling and all the above. Community-based residential program. Very similar, just they go about things a little bit different. Institutionalization in a mental hospital, which kind of ties into the outpatient psychiatric therapy, but no, you're not going in and out, you're staying. County or city institution, which means lockup. State or private training school, learning skills, rural setting. That might be boot camp, sheriff's ranch, and so forth. And again, adult or youthful offender facility, locked up. So, alternatives. Recidivism amongst juveniles transferred to adult court to that of those who are retained in juvenile court. And according to your text, it is proposed that juveniles tried as adults have higher recidivism rates because of the stigmatism and other negative effects. The sense of resentment and injustice juveniles feel about being tried and convicted as adults, the learning of criminal mores and behaviors in prison. In other words, they get educated, and not in a good way. Bad guys teach them bad things. And the decreased focus on rehabilitation and family support in the adult system. And it sounds bad. In some instances, it is. But remember, we got to think of the victims. You know, Junior committed carjackings, armed robbery, and shot some people. Do we feel bad? Can we look back at the intake officer's file and say, we tried everything. We went through everything. We always want to think we could have done more, but you know what? We got to lock up Junior. He's a danger to society. All right. So final thought. I try to give a different one every week. The 6 ethics of life. And I'll read these. So before you pray, believe. Before you speak, listen. It's a hard one for everybody. Before you spend, earn it. Before you write, think. You know, I've learned in my tenure, don't write scathing emails and hit send. Write what you need to write on a Word document, save it, and think about it. I guarantee you're going to change it. Before you quit, try. Don't quit this class. Don't quit school. You know, I'm here to help. And before you die, live. Have some fun while you're doing this. School's supposed to be fun. Life's supposed to be fun. If you have any questions, as you know, I'm here. I'm invested in your success. I know you guys are working hard, and for a lot of you, online classes are tedious, and school in general. And we've had this talk. But I'm here. I'm an email, phone call away. See ya.